Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so you don't miss any more shocking and captivating stories. Enjoy watching. Michael Strathmore had never been the sort of man who craved attention, but the invitation to attend Olivia's annual charity gala felt like stepping into someone else's world. He knew the event was important to her. The meticulous planning, the guest list, the carefully curated seating charts. But he hadn't expected that tonight would feel like an invisible trap. He adjusted the cufflinks on his black suit and glanced at the program, trying to steady the buzz of nerves he hadn't anticipated. Olivia Strathmore, his wife of 8 years, floated across the room in a shimmering navy dress, laughing lightly with her friends, her hair catching the soft glow of the chandelier. Michael's chest tightened every time he watched her smile at someone, anyone else. He told himself it was silly. She loved him, hadn't she? They had a life, a home, a quiet weekend ritual they clung to when the city became too loud. But the sting in his chest didn't disappear. As he approached the table reserved for Olivia's partner, he noticed the subtle tension in the staff's faces. They didn't meet his gaze. A young waiter whispered something to another, and then, without explanation, a man stepped in front of him. Excuse me," the man said casually, with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "This seat's actually mine, reserved for my +1. Michael froze, a tight wave of disbelief rolling over him. I'm Olivia's husband," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. The man smiled again, infuriatingly calm, and said, "Really? Sorry, pal. Olivia's got me down for this spot. Maybe check the other side?" Something in Michael snapped, but instead of confronting the man, he stepped back, his hands trembling under the smooth cuff of his jacket. He wandered toward the edge of the hall, trying not to think, trying not to let anyone see his chest heaving. He wanted to ask Olivia about it, demand an explanation. But the moment passed. The man had slid into the seat as if he owned it, as if Michael was a ghost. Across the room, Olivia's laughter rang out, and the sight of her enjoying herself, so completely unaware or unconcerned, fueled a slow, burning anger in Michael's chest. He tried to focus on the other guests, on the sparkling glasses and the soft piano music, but every detail seemed sharp, a reminder that he didn't belong here tonight. After a while, he found a quiet corner, out of sight. He pulled out his phone and stared at it, not really reading anything. Every few seconds, he caught glimpses of Olivia and the man, the way they leaned toward each other, the way she touched his arm lightly when she laughed. Nothing overt, nothing scandalous, at least not yet, but Michael's stomach sank. There was something in the way she moved that felt unfamiliar, something that made the muscles in his jaw tighten. He couldn't admit it to anyone, not yet. Denial was easier than confrontation. He remembered the nights they used to stay up late, talking about dreams and disappointments, making quiet jokes. The thought made his chest ache. He felt unmoored, the floor of his world tilting. By the time the first course was served, Michael had made a quiet decision. He wasn't going to let this night pass without understanding. He would watch, listen, and above all, remember. Every laugh, every glance, every little gesture, he would catalog it all. At one point, he noticed Olivia moving toward the bar, the man trailing just behind. He followed at a distance, pretending to check his phone but observing everything. She leaned close and he caught a faint scent, something floral, something foreign to the perfume she normally wore. Michael swallowed hard, heart hammering. He wasn't paranoid. He had always trusted her. But tonight, something was undeniably off. He remembered the first time he had noticed a subtle change in her behavior. A text she hid too quickly, a faint defensiveness when he asked about her day. He had shrugged it off then, telling himself stress, work, deadlines. But the unease had never fully left. Now it was here, undeniable, crawling along his spine, whispering that he might not know the woman he had married as well as he thought. Michael excused himself and stepped outside into the cold night air. The city lights stretched before him, indifferent and expansive. He breathed deeply, trying to steady the storm of emotions. Hurt, confusion, and a sharp, creeping jealousy tangled in his chest. He had never wanted to be a jealous man, but there it was. The thought that Olivia might be slipping away, voluntarily, deliberately, gnawed at him with a merciless persistence. He considered confronting her tonight, but the thought of making a scene, of appearing paranoid in front of all her colleagues and friends, made him hesitate. He wasn't a man who thrived on drama, yet the desire to uncover the truth pulsed like a secret heartbeat beneath his skin. When he returned inside, Michael kept a careful distance, observing. Olivia smiled at others with warmth, but there was a flicker, a fleeting glance at the man in the seat that had been his, that made Michael's stomach twist. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it burned into his memory. He didn't know why she did it, what she felt, or if he was imagining it, but he would find out. Tonight had shifted something inside him. The gala, meant to celebrate and uplift, had revealed a fault line beneath the polished surface of their marriage. Michael felt it in the tightening of his chest, the restless energy in his legs, the quiet, simmering rage that refused to be ignored. He would not forget this night. He would watch. He would wait. And he would act, but not yet. As the music swelled and the evening carried on around him, Michael sat in the shadows, a silent observer of the life he had thought he knew. Somewhere between the champagne toasts and the laughter, he realized that nothing would ever feel the same again. The morning after the gala, Michael Strathmore sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The memory of the man in Olivia's seat haunted him, looping relentlessly in his mind. He ran a hand over his face, tugging at the stubble he hadn't bothered to shave the night before. Every detail replayed itself. The way Olivia's eyes lingered just a second too long, the subtle brush of her hand against the other man's arm, the faint, floral scent he couldn't place. He tried to tell himself it was nothing. She was charming, friendly, sociable. Maybe the man had been a last-minute guest. Maybe Olivia had tried to make the awkward situation work without embarrassing him. But deep down, Michael knew there was more. Something was off, and he felt the gnawing unease of a man trying to recognize danger before it's fully revealed. Over the next few days, he found himself watching Olivia in ways he hadn't before. At first, it was innocuous. He noticed the way she smiled at her phone, how she sometimes lingered longer than necessary in front of the mirror, the sudden interest in fragrances he didn't recognize. But small patterns began to emerge, almost imperceptible if one wasn't paying attention. One evening, while she claimed to be at a work dinner, Michael noticed her car parked across the street in an unfamiliar spot. He watched as she got out, pausing for a moment before hurrying into a building he didn't recognize. Michael's heart raced, an almost physical thrum of fear and suspicion. He wanted to call her, demand answers, but he stayed in the car, silent, hidden in the shadows. The next night he checked her phone. He hated himself for it, but the uneasy knot in his stomach demanded action. Olivia had left it unattended while charging, a small window he couldn't ignore. There were no obvious messages at first, nothing explicit, but the pattern of her conversations was strange. She had begun deleting texts from certain contacts almost immediately after receiving them. Names that seemed casual on the surface had notes and nicknames he didn't recognize. Michael didn't confront her yet. Not now. The rational part of him whispered that he needed proof, undeniable evidence before he accused her. But every lie she told, every little inconsistency, pushed him closer to the edge. He started keeping a private journal, writing down dates, times, and small observations. At first it felt obsessive, almost paranoid, but it became a methodical exercise, a way to process the storm inside. He recorded how she left the bedroom earlier than usual to check emails, how she sometimes lingered on certain social media profiles, how the perfume she wore didn't match anything he had ever seen in their shared closet. One afternoon, he decided to follow her. Discreetly, silently, he trailed her in the city streets, careful to remain inconspicuous. She met the same man from the gala, Matthew Harlow, at a cafe in Midtown. They exchanged brief, private smiles, their conversation animated, yet subdued, intimate without being obvious. Michael's chest tightened. Anger, disbelief, and hurt collided in a mess of emotions he had no words for. He returned home in a daze, replaying the moment over and over. The journal now felt heavier, burdened with the weight of observation, but also a strange sense of control. He wasn't helpless. He could gather the truth, and he would. Despite the growing certainty in his heart, Michael maintained normalcy in the house. He acted as if nothing were amiss. When Olivia returned home, he asked about her day casually, listened attentively, made small talk, all while silently dissecting every word, every hesitation, every glance. She was charming, even mischievous, pretending everything was normal, but he saw the cracks in the facade. One night, he confronted a minor inconsistency. Olivia claimed she had stayed late at the office to prepare a presentation, but he had noticed her car parked near Matthew's apartment. She brushed it off casually, with a laugh. "I just stopped to grab a coffee on the way home. Work is stressful, you know." Her tone was light, but Michael caught the hesitation, the almost imperceptible tightness around her mouth. He didn't argue. He let it slide, cataloging it in the journal instead. Michael realized that confrontation, without full evidence, would only give her the upper hand. He needed certainty, and he would get it. Days passed. Michael found himself walking the thin line between suspicion and obsession. Every message alert, every missed call, every change in routine became a clue. He caught himself lingering near her workspace while pretending to read, checking for forgotten notes, glances at her calendar. He didn't like the person he was becoming, but the thought of betrayal fueled a relentless vigilance he couldn't suppress. Then came the moment that truly shook him. While Olivia showered one evening, Michael checked her laptop. It wasn't just texts or deleted messages. It was a series of shared files, calendars marked with private dinners, little notes between her and Matthew that were unmistakably intimate. Nothing explicit, nothing obscene, but the tone, the timing, the repeated secret meetings. It all painted a picture Michael couldn't ignore. His hands shook as he closed the laptop. He felt hollow, like the floor beneath him had dissolved. The woman he loved, the partner he had trusted, had been hiding a life within their life. It wasn't just betrayal. It was deliberate, calculated, and sustained. Michael retreated to the living room, sitting in the dark. The journal lay open, notes scribbled in meticulous detail, every entry now a testament to the unraveling of his marriage. Anger bubbled beneath the grief, and a cold, detached clarity began to form. He would confront her, not yet in public, not without preparation, but when he did, she would have no escape. The days that followed were a blur of observation, silent investigation, and emotional turmoil. Michael balanced the outward appearance of a loving husband with the inward reality of suspicion and heartbreak. Every shared meal, every casual touch, every smile had a weight now, a hidden meaning that gnawed at him. He even started leaving subtle, controlled tests for Olivia. Calls he knew she wouldn't answer, unexpected errands, casual mentions of social obligations she hadn't mentioned. Each reaction he observed, every little slip, confirmed his growing certainty. Michael wasn't paranoid. He was vigilant. And in that vigilance he began to feel the bitter taste of inevitability. He would know the truth. He would confront it. And, when the time came, he would decide the fate of their marriage with eyes wide open, guided not by emotion alone, but by the cold, undeniable facts that now consumed him. Michael Strathmore had never considered himself a vengeful man. Patience, rationality, and composure were his constants. Yet, as the weeks passed, he found his carefully maintained life unraveling under the weight of truth he could no longer deny. Every day revealed another fracture, another lie woven seamlessly into the fabric of their home. Olivia's laughter, once comforting, now grated like a serrated edge against his nerves. It started with the small confrontations: a misplaced phone, a forgotten meeting, an unusually long text message. Michael kept his tone measured, careful not to give away the depth of his awareness. "Did you really have that late meeting today?" he asked one evening, casually, while preparing dinner. Olivia's eyes flickered for just a moment, a hesitation so subtle it could have been accidental. "Yes," she said lightly, brushing off his question. "Why do you doubt me?" He smiled, a thin, careful smile. "No reason. Just making conversation." But the mask of calm was beginning to crack inside him. He could feel the anger simmering, coiling tightly around his heart. Yet he resisted the urge to explode. He wanted more than suspicion. He wanted proof, undeniable proof that would make confrontation impossible to deflect or deny. Michael's next step was deliberate. He set up small, careful surveillance of her patterns without alerting her. He monitored her routines, observed her digital habits, even noted the subtle changes in her wardrobe. The soft, floral scents she wore only when she thought he wasn't paying attention. Every detail confirmed the growing certainty he had carried for weeks. Olivia's life, parallel to his, existed somewhere he could see, but could not touch. Then came the breaking point. Olivia returned from a girls' night out, but the truth revealed itself through her sudden distraction and a faint, lingering scent on her wrist. Michael waited until she fell asleep, exhausted and unsuspecting, before reviewing the digital traces he had meticulously collected. Emails, text messages, photographs from private encounters, everything aligned. A web of secret meetings and whispered conversations with Matthew Harlow, the man who had so casually displaced him at the gala. Michael felt hollow and furious all at once. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the calculated secrecy, the deliberate denial of the life they had shared. 8 years, unraveling quietly in whispers and smiles, meant for someone else. He read one message aloud in the quiet of the night, voice trembling, a mixture of disbelief and rage. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Alone. Just us." The words cut through him like a blade. He clenched his fists, but there were no tears, only a cold, crystalline clarity. He would confront her, and this time she could not evade the truth. The confrontation began subtly the next evening. They sat across from each other at the dinner table, a carefully orchestrated normality in place. Michael's voice was calm, even measured. "Olivia, we need to talk about something important." She paused mid-bite, sensing the shift in his tone. "What is it?" she asked, cautious now, her laughter and charm stripped away. "I've noticed things," he said slowly, carefully. "Things that don't make sense. Patterns that don't add up." He watched her closely, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse. Her eyes widened just slightly, and a faint flush appeared on her cheeks. "Michael, I don't—" she began, but he cut her off, holding up his hand. "Don't lie to me, Olivia. I've watched, I've followed, I've documented. I know about Matthew. I know about the dinners, the messages, everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. Olivia's carefully constructed calm faltered, and she looked down at her plate, twisting her napkin nervously. "Michael, it's complicated," she whispered. "Complicated," he said, voice rising slightly, controlled anger threading each word. "Do you realize what you've done? Not just to me, but to us. To everything we built? She looked up, eyes glossy, lips trembling, but Michael didn't soften. He had spent weeks collecting facts, observing her behaviors, letting his emotions simmer, but not dominate. Now was the time for clarity, not indulgence. "You betrayed me, Olivia," he said. "You chose to create another life behind my back. And for what? A thrill? A fling? Tell me, because I need to understand what made 8 years nothing to you." She remained silent, the room thick with tension. Michael felt a strange mixture of relief and devastation. Relief that the truth was out in the open, devastation at the depth of her deceit. He didn't yell, didn't cry, at least not immediately. He let the truth hang between them like a weight, forcing her to feel the gravity of her actions. Then he laid out the evidence, calmly, but meticulously. Every message, every secret meeting, every slip and lie. He presented it all, the cold precision of someone who had refused to be blindsided. Olivia's facade crumbled. She tried to explain, to plead, but Michael had moved past needing explanations. He listened briefly, registering her words, then shook his head. "No, I don't want your excuses. I want accountability. And the truth is, you don't value what we had enough to be honest." The confrontation was merciless, but necessary. Michael's heartbreak was raw, tangible. He felt his chest tighten with grief and anger, every memory of shared laughter now tainted with betrayal. And yet, beneath it all, a quiet resolve began to form. He would not be broken. He would reclaim his life, and she would face the consequences of her choices. By the next morning, Michael had made his decision. He would leave, and he would do so on his own terms. He would take the high ground, but he would also ensure that the betrayal didn't go unanswered. Olivia could no longer dictate the terms of their marriage, or the narrative of their lives. He drafted the papers, carefully, methodically. Divorce, clear, final, irreversible. He left a note, brief but pointed, detailing the reasons and his decision. He didn't linger. There was no rageful destruction, no screaming confrontation beyond the confrontation the night before. Just clarity, resolve, and the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming agency over his own life. And then came a small, deliberate touch of retribution. Not cruel, not violent, but precise. He forwarded a summary of the timeline and evidence to mutual friends, carefully curated, to ensure she understood the gravity of what had happened, socially as well as personally. Not revenge for its own sake, but a reminder. Betrayal had consequences. As he packed his car and drove away from the home they had shared, Michael felt a strange mix of loss and liberation. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but beneath it, a hardened resolve took root. He would rebuild, carefully and deliberately, stronger than before. Olivia would have to live with the choices she made. Michael didn't look back. He allowed himself one final thought. He had survived the unthinkable, faced the unbearable, and emerged with clarity and purpose. The next chapter of his life awaited, untainted by deceit, and he would meet it on his terms. The house felt hollow the first morning after Michael moved out. Olivia's presence lingered in faint sense, a soft echo of laughter, and the imprint of her belongings in every corner. He walked through the empty rooms, cataloging memories that now felt tainted. It was surreal, how quickly a home, once a sanctuary, could become a monument to betrayal. He didn't leave in anger, not in the way movies or novels might depict. No shouting matches, no dramatic slamming doors. Instead, he moved with quiet determination, each box packed, each room emptied, a symbolic cleansing of the life she had tried to fracture. The routine itself, decisive, deliberate, offered a strange form of comfort. Michael had always been a man of control, and reclaiming it now was more vital than revenge. Yet, he allowed himself a subtle satisfaction. Before leaving, he had ensured that Olivia received the consequences of her choices. The timeline he had forwarded to mutual friends, highlighting her deceit without embellishment, created ripples. Social invitations were suddenly sparse. Colleagues whispered. Michael didn't gloat. He simply observed, detached, the knowledge that truth, methodically presented, had its own weight. As he drove through the city, the skyline stretched ahead like a promise. Michael felt the old tight knot of anxiety in his chest slowly ease. The betrayal had left scars, but it had also awakened a clarity he had never experienced before. He realized something profound. Love, when betrayed, doesn't just hurt. It teaches. It exposes what is tolerable, what is not, and who you truly are when faced with deceit. Weeks passed. Michael slowly rebuilt routines, smaller things at first. Mornings with a coffee at the corner cafe instead of shared breakfast. Evening walks alone, listening to podcasts he had ignored during the marriage. Nights of reading, of reflection, of facing the raw emotions he had tucked away, while maintaining the facade of the perfect husband. Pain remained, but so did resilience, slowly knitting itself into something stronger. He met friends for lunches, quietly reasserting connections Olivia's betrayal had weakened. They listened, some shocked, some empathetic, as Michael recounted his experience, not as an accusation, but as a narrative of survival. His voice was calm, measured, not seeking sympathy, only acknowledgement. It was a quiet reclamation of self, a subtle victory over the helplessness he had once felt. One evening, he walked past a familiar street corner and noticed a small cafe. Something about the sunlight catching the windows made him pause. Without thinking, he stepped inside. There was a table by the window, empty, inviting. Michael ordered a coffee and sat, quietly observing the city as it moved around him. No journal, no watchful observations. Just him, present, letting the world exist without the weight of deceit pressing against his chest. And yet, the shadow of betrayal never fully disappears. It only fades into a sharper sense of discernment. Michael found himself watching for subtle cues in relationships, conversations, gestures. He no longer assumed trust blindly, but he had learned that vigilance need not turn into obsession. He had discovered a balance between caution and openness, a clarity born of fire. Months later, a letter arrived at his new apartment. It was from Olivia. She wrote carefully, almost formally, apologizing, attempting to explain, perhaps even seeking forgiveness. Michael read it, a faint ache stirring, but he felt no longing, no desperation. He set the letter down, leaving it unopened beyond the initial read. Her words, carefully chosen, could no longer touch him. The chapter was closed. Michael reflected on the journey, the suspicion, the careful observation, the confrontation, the quiet justice, and finally, the liberation. He understood now that love could be betrayed, but personal integrity, patience, and decisiveness could restore power over one's life. Olivia's actions had taught him the depth of his own resilience. And then came the small, almost poetic closure. He reconnected briefly with a friend of his own, someone who had quietly admired him for years. There was no rush, no substitution for what had been lost, only the gentle reminder that life moved forward. A simple smile, a shared cup of coffee, a conversation untainted by past deception. Michael allowed himself to feel something new, something cautiously tender. On a quiet evening, he walked along the river, city lights shimmering on the water, a soft wind brushing against his face. He felt whole in a way he hadn't in months. The betrayal that had threatened to shatter him had instead refined him. He understood pain, yes, but he understood also survival, dignity, and the quiet, satisfying strength of reclaiming his life on his terms. The final thought that lingered, serene yet potent, was not one of anger, not one of lingering resentment, but of triumph through clarity. He had been hurt, deceived, and yet he had emerged intact, wiser, stronger. The past remained a shadow, but it no longer dictated his steps. The horizon ahead was his, and for the first time in a long while, Michael Strathmore felt free.